Are you sure that sweet treat you are enjoying is really just dessert? Or are you slowly swallowing a hidden danger? Recently, more than 2 million pastries in the United States were recalled because of an extremely dangerous bacterial contamination, the kind that has sent older adults to the hospital only hours after eating. Other products have been suspected of containing preservatives linked to cancer banned in Europe, but still quietly showing up in American breakfasts. Even worse, these names come from long-standing brands tied to childhood memories, trust, and a sense of safety. But what is the truth? The more you trust, the more they hide. In this video, we will reveal 5 foods that look harmless, but are actually sweet traps that older Americans need to avoid at all costs. Number 1. Dunkin' Donut. Do you still remember that sweet smell of a Dunkin' Donut in the morning? Maybe it was a munchkin in a white paper box or a coffee roll paired with your workday cup of coffee. That was memory. But what about today? In February 2025, Dunkin' accidentally or maybe knowingly became the center of one of the largest pastry recalls in the past decade. More than 2 million donuts, munchkins, crullers, coffee rolls, and many other items were pulled in an emergency recall because of possible contamination with Listeria monocytogenes. It may sound distant, but if you are 55, 65, or older, stop right here. This bacteria can cause dangerous infections, meningitis, or septic shock. According to the CDC, Listeria is among the deadliest bacteria for older adults and those with weakened immune systems. Sold at hundreds of Dunkin' locations nationwide, these pastries had been on shelves for months before the recall even began. And the most dangerous part is that there is no way to tell if a donut is contaminated just by looking at it. It still tastes sweet. It still looks perfect. And you retired and sitting at home still believe you are safe. The truth is, Dunkin' does not make all of its products itself. They source them from FGF Brands, a major manufacturer in Canada. The recall notice was filed under FDA Class 2, which means a medium risk. The health impact may be temporary or reversible, but it is serious for sensitive groups. And who is the most sensitive in our society? The answer is obvious. Many people ask, why did Dunkin' let this happen? The answer lies in the supply chain. As a fast food giant, Dunkin' depends on outside partners to supply products nationwide. Just one small mistake in the process is enough for Listeria to hide in a mixing bowl on the packaging line or in a storage freezer. Marketing may want to push sales fast, but the person eating a donut is not waiting to hear about a recall months later. This is not the customer's fault, but it becomes the customer's burden. Do you know if the donuts you ate in the past 6 months were on the recall list? Have you ever looked closely at the birth certificate of the donut you eat? Many people have cut back on fast food, fewer burgers. But donuts are not really fast food, right? Wrong. Today, donuts are industrial products. They can be packaged from January to December. They are something older adults should be just as cautious about as a burger or a bag of chips. Share this video with your family and friends, with anyone who still thinks donuts are as comforting as they used to be. The truth is, not nearly that comforting. Number 2. Krispy Kreme. It all started when Krispy Kreme teamed up with McDonald's in a large-scale distribution deal. On paper, it sounded exciting, 2 fast food giants joining forces to reach more people. But what was the price of that reach? Shorter production times, a tighter distribution chain, and quality standards stretched thin to the level of good enough, not perfect. The first to notice were not the journalists. It was the older customers. The ones who had been eating Krispy Kreme every week, every month for over 20 years. They knew exactly what an original glazed was supposed to taste like. They did not need to read a label to realize that a donut was boxed too quickly or made with refrigerated dough instead of fresh. One bite was enough to tell them this is not the Krispy Kreme of 2010. On senior food forums, Reddit and Facebook, hundreds of people began sharing their thoughts. One person wrote, "The donuts taste like mass-produced products, now no soul left in them." Another replied, "I have to reheat them in my oven at home because the glaze is stiff like it just came out of the fridge." The issue is not picky taste buds. The issue is the quiet shift in how a major brand puts profits ahead of quality while most of its loyal customers cherished every single one of these donuts as part of their memories. Now stop and think. If you already stopped believing the word natural on a cereal box, if you no longer drink packaged coffee because of the strange flavor, or if you worry about the sodium hidden in every burger, Krispy Kreme should have been the last safe haven. But if even they are now trading freshness for volume, who is left to trust? It is not hard to see why this matters. For young people, a dry donut or cracked glaze is just bad luck. But for older adults, especially those with diabetes or other conditions, it means their bodies are taking in products with unpredictable sugar levels, moisture, and shelf life. A donut made with a changed recipe can spike blood sugar in unexpected ways, even if the label shows nothing new. What makes this worse is that Krispy Kreme has said nothing about the changes in production. No explanation, no warning, no apology, no one taking responsibility, just new boxes, the same old logo, and an unspoken sense of loss. The question for you is, did you notice? Did you ever feel that difference, or did you just shrug it off, telling yourself, maybe I am too sensitive? If you did notice, it is not that you are too sensitive. It is that you are alert. And being alert right now is the most important action you can take to protect your health. Because the biggest danger is not a donut contaminated with bacteria or filled with banned additives. The real danger is when your own body reacts, but you have been trained to ignore it. Krispy Kreme may never have been labeled unsafe, but the quiet drop in quality, unspoken and unnoticed, is the most dangerous kind of risk for older adults. It does not come from a scandal. It comes from compromise. And it shows up bite by bite, donut by donut, every time you eat one and sense nothing is wrong, yet deep down feel that something is not right. Number 3, Winchell's Donuts. If you are on a diet, living with a health condition, or have ever worried about additives in your food, the most honest advice is this: stay away from any pastry with preservatives you cannot even pronounce. Especially when that pastry is a donut, and the brand behind it is Winchell's. Winchell's Donuts is not as big as Dunkin or Krispy Kreme, but it quietly shows up in countless gas stations, convenience stores, and small bakeries across the western United States. Because of that, many people assume it is a local, friendly, non-industrial brand. That assumption is dangerous. In reality, some Winchell's Donuts have been found to contain controversial additives, particularly BHA and BHT. If you have never heard of those names, here is what matters: both are banned in food products across the European Union because of concerns about cancer risk. In the United States, however, they are still allowed as long as the amount stays below a so-called safe threshold approved by the FDA. Sounds reasonable, not really, because most American consumers are never directly warned. There is no big label saying may contain ingredients banned in Europe. No notice that you are eating something other countries deemed too risky to approve. It is hidden in the fine print on the package, contains TBHQ preserved with BHT. And if you do not pay attention, you are swallowing what international health agencies call a possible carcinogen. Remember this: Winchell's Donuts does not operate at the same massive scale as the big chains, which means they are not under the same level of scrutiny in the press. That makes it easier for them to rely on cheaper, longer-lasting ingredients. For small-scale shops, longer shelf life means less waste, and chemical preservatives are the easiest way to get there. The scariest part: these chemicals do not change the flavor. They do not make the donut taste off. They do not leave a chemical aftertaste. They soak into the glaze, the filling, the dough itself, and you would never know. Think about it. When was the last time you actually read the ingredient list on a donut? How long have you assumed that sweet means safe? For younger people, maybe that is just habit. But for older adults, for anyone with heart disease, for people battling cancer, or recovering from radiation tracking, every ingredient that goes into the body can be a matter of survival. And among the foods most likely to slip under the radar, donuts are at the top of the list. Winchell's Donuts once had a decent reputation in local communities. They did not spend big on ads. They did not try flashy PR stunts. But by not being transparent, they quietly put out products that may not meet basic expectations for health safety, especially for the most vulnerable group in society, older adults. We do not need panic. We need awareness. We need to ask the right questions. Why is Europe banning a substance that the United States still allows? Why are the ingredient labels so tiny no one can read them? And why, with so many other sweet options available, do we choose something that builds up hidden risks day after day? If you have ever eaten a Winchell's donut and noticed the taste felt a little off, or maybe the softness, crispness, or shelf life seemed almost too perfect, chances are it was the very chemicals Europe has already banned. And if you ever told yourself, it is fine, just one donut, remember this: your body is accumulating those donuts week after week, month after month. Do not let familiarity cloud your judgment. Do not let the simplicity of a donut lower your guard. If you've already cut out packaged snacks, given up Coke, and turned away from fast food, then Winchell's Donuts deserves to be on that same list. Not because of the flavor, but because of what no one tells you and what your body is forced to carry. Number 4, Safeway. When people think of Safeway, the first impression is often positive. A clean supermarket bakery shelves, always full sale signs hanging everywhere. But when it comes to donuts, the story is very different. The donuts made in store at Safeway or brought in under their private label have been flagged many times by consumers for a lack of transparency about ingredients and actual shelf life. In an independent review carried out in early 2024 by a consumer group in California, more than 60% of the donuts sold at Safeway were found without clear labeling of their actual production date. Some samples did not even list ingredients, something the FDA requires by law. That means buyers had no way of knowing what they were eating, how long the donuts had been sitting around, what preservatives were inside, or if the storage was handled properly. This is especially alarming for middle-aged and older customers who are more vulnerable to complications from contaminated or poorly preserved food. Do not forget one small mistake in refrigeration. A tiny mold spot invisible to the eye is enough to cause digestive trouble, nausea, or even internal infection if the immune system is already weak. Consumers have shared countless complaints on AARP forums and Reddit about buying donuts that looked fine but showed signs of being old. The glaze soaking back into the dough, a greasy, burnt smell despite looking perfect. Even fillings that were clumpy or slightly discolored. With no warning label, people did not suspect spoiled food. Only when severe stomach pain hit a few hours later did they start to connect the dots. So why does Safeway let this happen? Part of the answer lies in their production model. Many Safeway stores do not bake donuts directly on site, but instead bring them in from large processing centers following the system of pre-made reheated displayed. To keep them looking fresh from the oven, the stores often leave off the actual production date or source. The result is that customers believe they are buying fresh products when in reality they might be eating something that was frozen and made last week. That blurred line erodes trust. For younger people, a slightly stale donut might be no big deal. But for older adults, it can mean a week in the hospital, a painful stomach infection, or a disruption in medication if blood sugar or blood pressure are thrown off. The bigger question is, why does no one speak up? The truth is some people do, but those voices are drowned out by Safeway's attractive promotions. When donuts are sold under deals like buy 6, get 6 free, most people ignore labels, quality, and ingredients, believing they scored a bargain. But is it really a bargain if it ends with a prescription for antibiotics? This is not to say every product at Safeway is unsafe. But with donuts in particular, a food that spoils easily carries high risk of bacterial contamination and is loaded with sugar, oil, and fat, the lack of clear labeling is unacceptable, especially when the biggest consumers are children and older adults. If you have ever thought buying from a supermarket is safer than a local shop, maybe it is time to think again. A box of donuts near the oven with a tempting smell does not mean it just came out of the oven. It only means you were made to believe it did. And if you have ever felt exhausted after eating what seemed like a light donut, if you have experienced acid reflux, bloating, or even insomnia from blood sugar spikes, it may not just be age catching up. It may be that the donut you ate was not as transparent as you thought. Do not let familiarity make you careless. For older adults, every bite is a choice with lasting consequences. Sometimes saying no to a donut with an unclear origin is the simplest way to protect yourself from consequences no one wants to face. Number 5. Shipley Donuts. At the end of 2022, a quiet recall was issued in certain regions, so low-key that local news barely covered it. The reason several Shipley products were suspected of salmonella contamination, the same bacteria that has sent hundreds of seniors to the hospital after eating what seemed like harmless bites of food. Unlike the big brands with rapid response systems, this case almost disappeared after a few dry administrative notices from the manufacturer. The real concern here was not just the presence of salmonella, but how the information was handled. There was no urgent public warning campaign, no statement sent directly to loyalty members, no emails, no in-store warning signs. Everything was buried in a downloadable PDF on the USDA website, and if you did not happen to search for it, you would never know that the donut you ate yesterday was on a danger list. Picture this: an older adult living alone with a history of digestive issues or high blood pressure stops by the store and picks up a discounted box of donuts. They eat one in the afternoon, then start feeling uneasy. By evening, the diarrhea, dizziness, and weakness set in. Nobody suspects the sweet pastry. It looked fine, smelled fine, nothing seemed off. Only after hospitalization do loved ones find out that the intestines have been severely damaged. These stories never make the front page, but they happen. To be clear, Shipley is not an inherently bad brand. They were once a go-to favorite for families across the South. But it is exactly that reputation that makes people let their guard down. Customers assume it is no big deal that it was just a small batch, or that the company already fixed it. But trust without transparency is nothing more than a gamble. The truth is, no company can guarantee 100% control in the food industry. But when something goes wrong, what customers expect is not a late apology. They expect a clear, timely, honest warning. That was where Shipley fell short. And for seniors, the most vulnerable group who rarely track online updates and are not in the habit of checking fine print, this kind of silent response is essentially a built-in risk. Some defenders will say, that was back in 2022, they must have improved by now. Maybe yes, maybe no. The real question is, if they failed to be transparent once, can you fully trust them the next time? As long as food recalls for contaminated products are treated like small print in the corner of a newspaper, no one should feel completely safe. The most troubling part is that Shipley never released a complete list of locations affected, which means if you live near a small franchise shop, you have no way of knowing whether you were in the danger zone. This is the kind of hidden risk seniors cannot detect on their own, because it does not appear obvious, does not scream for attention, and hides quietly inside a pastry that looks picture perfect. So ask yourself if a brand once allowed potentially contaminated products to reach consumers without timely warning. Was that a mistake or a choice? If you once bought Shipley donuts because they seemed safe, convenient, and cheap, can you still be sure they are risk-free the next time? For older adults, every food decision matters. And with something as deceptively risky as a donut, awareness has to come before habit. Shipley may have been part of your childhood memories, but your health today requires more than nostalgia. It requires transparency, accountability, and caution, even with brands that once felt like family. Beneath the sugarcoating and the familiar name, few would expect donuts, such an innocent-looking treat, to carry so many hidden health risks, especially for seniors. From dangerous bacteria to questionable additives, from declining quality to misleading labels, all of it quietly chips away at the body day by day. We do not need to live in fear of every pastry, but we do need to stay alert to know what can be trusted and what should be avoided. And if the brands that once shaped our childhood no longer deserve that trust, then the wisest choice is simply to say no. Have you ever eaten one of these? And do you still feel as confident as you once did?
This video does not promote division within the United States or encourage intoxication. All content is presented for the purpose of exploration, analysis, and fostering discussion based on current events, public sentiment, and social trends. We fully respect the United States Constitution and all federal regulations. If today analysis made you think, drop a comment so we can keep the conversations going. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you will never miss our next independent deep dive.